If you've been on a plane and you look around the plane and you see, 20 empty seats, or you've been in a stadium and you look around and you see, 1,000 empty seats, it's like pretty obvious to people that, wow, like we had to get this plane fueled up. We had to have the pilot working. We had to have the staff working. And so to get it into the sky was relatively expensive. And so every single one of those seats that's not full is a huge lost revenue opportunity. And restaurants kind of suffer from the same problem.
Welcome to Triangle Tweener Talks, a weekly podcast by builders for builders where we explore the startup journey from the idea to the exit and all the lessons in between, with an exclusive focus on founders from the Triangle region of North Carolina. Now here's your host, serial founder and general partner of the Triangle Tweener Fund, Scott Wingo.
First, a huge thank you to our gold sponsors. Today we are featuring Robinson Bradshaw. With national reach and deep Triangle ties, Robinson Bradshaw delivers high-touch, sophisticated legal counsel to emerging growth companies and venture investors. We'd also like to recognize our silver sponsors. Today's Tweener Talk features Automated Consulting Group. From AI strategy to ROI in 90 days, Automated Consulting Group brings executive-level AI expertise to businesses without enterprise budgets. Finally, thank you to our sponsor, Extensis HR. So that founders can focus on innovation for over 25 years, Extensis HR has leveraged a people-first approach, customer-centric mindset, and deep industry expertise to ensure employers have the tools they need to stay competitive in today's market. Thank you again to all of our sponsors for supporting Triangle Tweener Talks and the entire Triangle startup community. It takes an ecosystem to build a thriving community, and sponsors like these are very valuable, and they contribute their time and also help sponsor things like the Triangle Tweener Talks and Triangle Tweener Times. Thank you. Welcome to the Tweener Talks podcast. My guest this week is Dave Shaner, founder and CEO of Offline. This is part one of a two-part series. In this first part of our conversation, we'll hear about where David's from, where he went to school, and the founding story and 12-year journey of Offline and how he's built it. He'll walk us through several different eras, and it's in the restaurant business, so COVID is going to play a big part in this story. And then we'll wrap up our conversation. In the next conversation, we will have David is doing a lot of really cool things with AI, automating. He's taken part of his team and automated about half of his company. He's got AI SDRs, a chief of staff, and using a variety of tools. We'll walk through what I would call his productivity stack on a personal level, and then also what he's done for Offline. Talk about a lot of the best practices he's found and what he's going to be playing with next. Enjoy part one of this conversation. Here's my interview with Dave Shaner. Welcome to Tweener Times. I am excited to welcome David Shaner, CEO and founder of Offline. Dave, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Scott. Happy to be here.
Excited to have you. So let's start with your background. Like me, you went to NC State. Tell us about your time at State and what you studied.
Yeah, so I grew up here in North Carolina. I think you knew that. And NC State was just far enough away from home to get away from the family, but close enough to get back, And I kind of went in blind, not really knowing what I wanted to do. I just knew engineering and ended up doing chemical. My kind of dumb, math on it was there's chemicals in everything. So
true.
It'll never go out of fashion.
Yeah.
I got pretty far into it and I realized that I had probably made a big mistake. I found it a little esoteric. In chemie, everything is a proxy. So, hey, we put two things into a tank and the temperature went up, therefore we can infer something must have happened. But I realized, there was a lot of good in the foundational education. So I finished my chemie degree there, but my senior year, I kind of got indoctrinated into entrepreneurship and ended up founding Offline as part of my class project in 2012.
And which part of the state are you from?
Burlington.
Didn't want to go to Elon.
No, there's some, Robbie Allen, your sparring partner, is a Burlington guy.
Yeah. And then, so at NC State, did the entrepreneurship initiative in the garage and all that get you into entrepreneurship, or was it? Did you take a business class?
Seth Holler came in and gave a talk.
Oh.
It was when I was going into my senior year, and I had this job offer from Procter & Gamble, and so I already knew I had a gig, and so that kind of left me feeling free to just explore. He basically came in and said, "Hey, you don't want to go do your engineering senior design project. You should come learn about startups instead." And I was like, "Yeah, that's a pretty good pitch." So I did that. It was the EEP, which Marshall ran.
So instead of working on the next generation of shampoos, you decided to start a business.
Little did I know, chemies, they go and make liquor and all kinds of cool stuff.
Yeah.
I just didn't know.
You were right. It isn't everything. Tide Pods, there's chemicals in there.
Everything.
What inspired you to start Offline? And this is, I saw on LinkedIn 2012 is kind of what you list as the starting day. So been at it 13 years now, 14. Yeah. Going on 14.
The genesis was my dad was a practicing psychotherapist, and he, after the iPhone came out and then the iPad came out, he was sending me all these research papers that he was reading about the effects of screen time on kids. So I was reading about that, and I was starting to form some opinions about what screens were doing to people. And then there was an article I read, I think it was in 2010 or 2011. It was a graph of the percent of our waking life that we spend on a screen. And it had kind of gone all the way back to pre-screen times. And it just showed this kind of parabolic, right? And it just, I don't know why it hit me so viscerally, but I was like, man, only like a couple generations ago, there wasn't a single screen on planet Earth. And now we spend all day on them. And I wonder what that's going to do to us, And so for whatever reason, I became really interested in that. And then, as you know, there's the long, arduous process of trying to wrap a business model around some idea. And that's kind of what I've been going through for the last 13 years. But the genesis was human connection. And I guess maybe being a little bit prescient about that we were eventually going to hit this human connection crisis that I think we're in the middle of today, that is a little bit more widely known and discussed. Back in 2010, 2011, it was still like, oh, this is so fun. We just have a supercomputer in our pocket that we can check all the time.
So you've been at it a while. Kind of break Offline in your adventure there into eras. So there's kind of like the founding era, and then anything that I know you're involved in restaurants. So anything that touched restaurants, COVID was kind of a wacky time. So that'll be an era, and then maybe post COVID. So maybe pre, during, and post would be good framework, unless you have another way you think about it. Walk us through kind of your journey there.
Yeah, well, I like the rule of threes. So it's basically been three companies under one brand name. So the initial idea, going back to the genesis, right? Human connection. How do you connect people? The original idea was very typical, like senior in college. There's like a whole version of startups that are all like typical senior in college ideas that I'm sure you've recognized over the years. It's like, people need to be able to meet new people when, that's one of them. And so I kind of fell into that, and we wanted to build a riff on meetup.com, if you remember meetup.com. And the idea was like, hey, Meetup sucks for a lot of different reasons, and like, we're going to make a better version of it. And I kind of think of this era as it was me coming out of chemical engineering, thinking that I knew a lot because I was an engineer, and realizing that I knew nothing, and learning all the different things that go with being a founder: fundraising, sales, marketing, hiring, firing, fundraising. I mean, the whole gamut. And so I went through the Startup Factory, which Chris Hively and Dave Neal were running. And we kind of attempted to build a product for, I think it was about 18 months to 2 years, right? We tried to build this version of Meetup, and I won't get into the gory details of the product, but that was kind of the first version. And I look back on it now as almost like, getting my master's in like startups. That's effectively what it was. After I had a couple years under my belt, and I sort of knew how to build stuff and validate a market and things like that, I was looking at this thing that we had cobbled together, which was supposed to be, hey, you moved to a new city, you don't know anybody, like we're going to help you meet new people. When we were talking to customers, the thing they kept saying over and over again was, yeah, I kind of want to meet people, but like, I just don't know what's going on in the city. Like I just picked up and left state and I moved to Atlanta or I moved to Nashville or something. And yeah, I don't know anybody, but meeting new people is a little freaky. What's going on in Nashville tonight? This was the era where like websites were still not mobile optimized. So, we would be sitting in these customer interviews, people would open up their phone and they would Google, what's going on in Nashville, things to do in Nashville. They'd end up on the Visitors Bureau website. And it would be like this huge website trying to be crammed into a mobile portal, and it had 7,000 listings on it. And, Facebook hadn't even really nailed mobile and done Facebook events yet. And so we were kind of looking at this and thinking, okay, maybe the opportunity is different. Maybe the opportunity is building a really curated experience for people that are looking for things to do, restaurants, events, et cetera, et cetera. So era number 2 for offline, which was basically 2014 to 2018, was building a mobile native app that we ended up launching in Raleigh-Durham, Charlotte, and Nashville, as well as social media, website, newsletter, all centered around what to do in your city and approaching it in like a curated visual millennial first kind of perspective. And we ended up raising some money for that. I think we all told we might have raised $4 million for that idea. I got my first experience of trying to kind of scale up a team. And this was also the era that we all remember so fondly of, you don't really need a business model. You just need to go get a bunch of users. And so, we were just trying to go after eyeballs and suck up as much usage as we possibly could. And by the time we got to 2018, we were reaching about 3 million people a month, all told, across the app, email, website, et cetera. But then we kind of turned to monetization and we realized, oh, great, we've like basically reinvented like WRAL without the news station and without the cash cow that owns distribution. And so now we got to like sell advertising, and oh crap, if we plug into the Google Display Network, we're going to get a penny a hit. And if we go sell these like curated local ad packages to, Diamonds Direct, we need a sales team. And so it was just kind of this nasty coming to Jesus moment around, wow, we've built something that has like product market fit in some ways, but not in the ultimate way, which is the unit economics and the profitability.
Consumer is so hard. You've got distribution, monetization, churn. It's just like, it is the hardest of things.
And I should have learned my lesson, but I went right back to the well a third time for consumer. And so era number 3, which is kind of the era that offline's in now, which has been the most sustainable and interesting, is as a subscription business. And so in 2018, I was sitting there looking at what we had built, which was kind of a small lifestyle media business. And I was watching what I was calling the subscriptionification of everything. So in 2018, right, you got kind of ClassPass starting to take off. You had all the subscription boxes starting to show up at people's houses. You had Spotify and Netflix, and I was just sort of looking through the list of what our target customer, which was basically a 25 to 34 college educated female. I was looking at how like their share of wallet, right, and going down, and it's like, well, there's a subscription for this, and a subscription for this, and a subscription for this, and a subscription for this. And it seemed odd to me that there was no breakout product for subscription for like going out to eat. I at that point had been doing this long enough that I was able to sort of piece together what that product might be and what the value prop for merchants and consumers might be, and test it out. And so we launched the offline subscription in March of 2018. And the basic idea was, as a consumer, you pay us, it's now $120 a year. And in exchange for your $120 a year, we have this hyper curated list of restaurants for you to try. And at each one of these restaurants, you get between $10 and $60 off your tab. And if you were to go call up 50 offline subscribers and ask them why they like offline, they would say, well, it incentivizes me to try new things because I I sit and I see TikTok and Instagram, and I see all these restaurants, all this stuff going on, all these like beautiful places. And then I get analysis paralysis and end up going back to the same place I've been going to for 5 years. And the fact that I'm paying for this subscription kind of nudges me enough to go out and try something new. And I'm also making my subscription dollars back when I go out and try that thing. So we launched that in 2018. Two-sided marketplace, subscription, all the tough things were still baked into that. But we immediately got some good traction for it, and we got to close to $500,000 of ARR in Raleigh-Durham just through organic word of mouth growth. And awesome. And then COVID hit, right? And so going back to your framing, that was probably the first time where I really seriously considered like just throwing in the towel and, hey, been a good run. Maybe I'll go work for somebody like Scott Wingo or something like that and get a product job somewhere. And, I had a great team. And I think we just had enough fundamental belief that the product was good that we decided to, gut it out. And, when things started to rebound in 2021, 2022, we expanded a little bit, and we're now in 10 cities in the US. We work with about 600 locally owned and operated restaurants and about 10,000 consumer subscribers. This sort of, we can do more offline and then we can get to AI. But what I think segues is that we now run that entire thing with like 2.5 people. Mm-hmm. At full speed, we were at 34. And so there's a lot to unpack there, but it's been a really interesting journey, both in terms of like my third crack at this market and also in terms of like how the world is changing with AI and automation.
I've got to tell the story of our first meeting. I can't remember, someone in the community, it may have been Hively. I don't remember how you reached out, or maybe directly. And, my office at Spiffy was over in kind of Durham, right on the edge of Durham, more RTP side. And there was a Starbucks there that was easy to meet. And you were like, you were very reluctant to meet at the Starbucks, but you eventually agreed. And I was like, why is this guy acting so weird about meeting at Starbucks? And we go in there and I look, and there's a guy sitting there with a giant whiteboard in his hands. And he's like, I can't have a meeting without a whiteboard. So I bought it with me. I was like, wow, that was great. So, and then sure enough, you were like whiteboarding like crazy. You're like, do you still do that?
I do. I had a call. I had a call this morning with, I'm not as obnoxious about bringing it places now, but have you ever used the website TL Draw? I don't know if
no.
Okay. So if you just go to tlddraw.com, it's instant whiteboard. You don't have to like authenticate or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I'll be on these calls with people, and I'll be like, hey, is it okay if I share my screen? Like there's something in my head I want you to see. And I'm not going to be happy until I show it to you.
Yeah. Is that from chemical engineering where you had to draw the compound to kind of visualize it or something, or is that just how your brain works?
I wish it was from organic chemistry or something. It's just the way I'm wired, and I can't do anything about it. I feel naked without a whiteboard.
Yeah, it's fun. It's each his own. It was a memorable story. I remembered you from that point forward. And I said, someday I'll have a podcast and I've got to get him on this podcast.
Maybe it was like, when the Bachelor, Bachelorette, right? When they first get out of the car, they got to do something crazy to be memorable.
Yeah, true.
I'm the whiteboard guy.
Everyone knows why why kind of young guys and gals want to meet other people and go hang out at restaurants and get discounts. Why do restaurants want to give that crowd discounts? Like, explain that side of the marketplace.
Probably the easiest way to understand it is everybody's been on a plane, and like planes are a really easy way to understand the problem of excess capacity. If you've been on a plane and you look around the plane and you see, 20 empty seats, or you've been in a stadium and you look around and you see, 1,000 empty seats, it's like pretty obvious to people that, wow, like we had to get this plane fueled up. We had to have the pilot working. We had to have the staff working. And so to get it into the sky was relatively expensive. And so every single one of those seats that's not full is a huge lost revenue opportunity. And restaurants kind of suffer from the same problem, right? Where if it's a Tuesday and it's slow, and 2/3 of the restaurant is empty, you still have to have the lights on. You still have to have the water running. You still have to pay your rent. You still have to have all the staff that's there.
Yep.
And so there's this thing that I didn't appreciate as much. I really do now. It's called incremental revenue or incremental cost. It's like the idea of if you have 30 people in your restaurant and you add a 31st, the cost of that 31st is very different than the cost of the first, right? Because all you have to add is a little bit of food cost and drink cost to service that person. You already have everything else. And so that's a pretty, the easy answer is like, oh, it's customer acquisition. But the more nuanced answer is it's incremental revenue. And so you can have a restaurant where the average check is, $150 or something. And it's actually good business for them to give a $50 credit to somebody to come fill a table that would have been empty. And the thing that made, I think, offline very different and made us stand out is there was this first wave of discount businesses like Groupon and Living Social and stuff, and they kind of terrorized a lot of small businesses.
Yeah.
And the reason is because it was a free platform. And so you very quickly had a race to the bottom. There's a segment of consumers that just want a deal, and they will do the bare minimum they have to get the deal. And most restaurants would tell you, like, we don't want those customers, right? And then what we found is like there's kind of a middle of the market where they're still incentivized by saving money. I mean, I would put myself in this bucket, right? I like saving money, but I really like experiencing new things too. And I really have an appreciation for good service and good food. And so if I get $50 off, I'm still going to spend my $150 to $200. So to answer your question, there's incremental revenue, there's customer acquisition, there's the quality of the customer that we were delivering. Like all of those were kind of ingredients. And then the thing that we've done over the last 2 years is actually integrating in with their point of sale system and being able to show them, here's exactly what's been going on with the customers we've sent you, how much you discounted, how much they've spent, how profitable it is. So it's been a really incredible value proposition on the restaurant side. And I think that's actually, if you think of the two-sided marketplace, who's the tail, who's the dog? The dog is for sure the restaurants. If it works for the restaurants, consumers love discounts. If it doesn't work for the restaurants, you go the Groupon and Living Social path.
Groupon is just kind of good for the consumer, super bad for the restaurant. You've invented one that's kind of like a Costco model, right? So you found these people that will pay for the experience and the discount, so that puts them in that other bucket you're talking about. They are value driven, but the fact they'll pay makes them a upper tier value driven, and they're probably convenience first and then value. Whereas the value person is like, value, I don't care about, I'll drive 60 miles to save a nickel on gas. Almost a rationality you find with consumers. There's a whole, I probably mentioned this to you at some point, but there's a whole Deloitte paper around the value oriented consumer and the convenience oriented consumer. The convenience oriented consumer is the same, some of them have the same irrationality where they'll pay, like $80 an hour for, basically, or a good example is DoorDash bringing the Chick-fil-A that was $8 and you pay DoorDash $25 all in, and you're like, wait a minute, or Uber Eats or whatever it is. Yeah. So there's it's interesting. The fun thing about consumer is teasing out these consumer behaviors, looking at cohort analyses. And I know you just do scads of that with your whiteboard. And so there's a lot of really interesting things to learn when you dig into that on a consumer. You don't get that in B2B. B2B is a little bit more boring in that way.
Well, I think what you're hitting on something that I think a lot of the things about offline's model are innovative and have worked really well. When you're trying to play both sides of that equation, it can be challenging, right? Because if you imagine two bell curves of consumers, one is the value people and one's the convenience people, and we're trying to find the slice in the middle, it can just make your go-to-market a little harder. Like what was so easy about Groupon is, hey, here's a bunch of free stuff. Like, who doesn't want free stuff, right? Essentially, right? It's like, there's no barrier to entry. You just come on this website, get a coupon, go spend it, right? And that was very attractive for the consumer. And so it was very viral. When you introduce this kind of friction, and and you don't have like a giant Costco warehouse, and you're having to pay for distribution on social or wherever else you're paying for it, the unit economics can be kind of challenging because you're looking for like a small segment of the population that fits both of those profiles. So yeah, it's super interesting to try to unpack all of that. And it plays into your pricing, it plays into how you distribute value between the restaurants and the consumers.
So this podcast is coming out. We're doing a 4-part series, Robbie and I started it off with every year between Christmas and New Year's, I spend a lot of time reflecting on time management. So in my 20s, I realized I was a young entrepreneur as well, and I had 3 kids. And I know you have a bunch of kids too. And that starts to create this really complicated calculus of doing what we do and work-life balance and everything. So I've always kind of obsessively worked on my productivity, and every year now, and it's only 2 years in, but on Tweener Times, I do a post, and it's one of the most popular ones. This year, I probably got a 4x from AI tools, and I've tried. I'm always trying to be on the bleeding edge because of that somewhat obsession with personal productivity. And last year, I didn't really get much from it. Like I'd use Superhuman, and I got Perplexity on the search. And then this year, it just like took a huge step function up. And I remember it may have been late 24, but you and I started talking about this, and you put some posts on LinkedIn where you started to get into some of these orchestration things. Like I can't remember if it was Apollo or N8N or Make or one of those. But you've let's kind of split your journey into 2 buckets if we can. Let's start with like personal productivity. Like let's keep it to there. And then you mentioned you've automated like really big chunks of the business. So I want to like talk about the business productivity, and maybe they're inseparable, but I imagine you've got some personal productivity ones that kind of enable you to spend more time on that. Let's start there. What are on the personal side? What's on your personal productivity stack?
I'll tell you a quick funny story about this. So I went up in my attic to look for something recently, and I found a box where I had kept all the little like daily productivity journals that people carry around. I probably had a box like this big and just rows of them from when I first started offline. So I think that people that have gotten really good with AI probably started out as being like productivity obsessed people. And I think for me, productivity obsession has shown up as process. So like, let's say you're looking around your business and you're trying, or your life, and you're trying to figure out how to be more productive. One of the first things you do is you start noticing, well, what are the things that are like patterns? What are the things that happen over and over and over again, kind of the same way every single day? Because those become shortcuts for how to save time. Because if you can like figure out the process, like I do X, then I do Y, then I do Z, then your brain can kind of go into autopilot. You're not like burning as many calories trying to do whatever the thing is that you're doing. And so pretty early on in my like founder journey, I would just start writing down the minute I noticed that I was doing something more than like 3 times and it was kind of the same way every time, that would become a little like process in my head. And so everything sort of became an existing process, or like a process waiting to happen once I figure out the pattern. And to your point about, family and kids, like I met my now wife when I was already working on offline, and I've now been married for 10 years and I have 4 kids. And so like along the way, I got put in that grinder of how do I do all of it, right?
Yeah.
So process was a big one, and I would say that was already kind of this personality that I had. And then the 2 things that kind of poured gasoline on it were reading the book Traction and really starting to say, okay, this isn't just a personal productivity thing where I've got my own little personal processes. This is an organizational thing where we have to have organizational processes. And then Tiny Habits was like, obviously like a big one a couple years ago. And some of these ideas like habit stacking, like he's got this idea that if you have an existing habit, so if every morning you like wake up and you make coffee, and you also want to remember to take like your medication for the day or something, just like put it next to the coffee maker. So there's a couple concepts from Tiny Habits that like I really took a lot of value out of. Habit stacking was one of them. And so I'd say in the personal productivity world, recognizing processes was a huge one. And then when it kind of flips over to the work world, it becomes about context switching. So if you've got it, like your typical days are probably a lot like mine were, where I've got, in the morning, I'm getting the kids out of the house to go to school. Then I'm jumping in and doing a sales meeting. Then I've got a board presentation, and then I've got a podcast I got to record, and then I've got a, whatever, right? I got a product review I got to do after that. All of these different things that you're doing, they're totally different domains of the business, and they all require different context. And so if I'm sitting down to do my board deck, I want to have a process for how I do that. And then I also want to have all the context that goes into the board deck. So the context might be a link, quick link out to our, HubSpot, so I can look at our sales pipeline, and a quick link to my internal, like my notes from our yearly kickoff meeting, and a quick note out to where I keep all my notes for my next board meeting. And like, it's the synthesis of all that context combined with the process of creating the board meeting deck. That's what like produces the board meeting deck. So I think I got like obsessively good at turning things into processes and recognizing what the context is that needs to come in to run that process to like produce something at the end. And there, there's little things that have weaved in and out of that over time. But as you've seen with your recaps, like one person's productivity stack in January of 2026 might be totally different by March or April. Yeah. So I think it's the high level concepts for me that have been the constant through the last 13 years.
Give us a snapshot of today, like on the personal side. What are a couple of your favorite tools that you use?
At our house, like we have these little like routine charts that we do for our kids. So we have like
little whiteboards.
That's right. I'm indoctrinating.
Each of your kids has a little whiteboard strapped to them.
They show up to school the first day with their little whiteboard, and the teacher's like, "All right, this is enough. It's enough of this." but no, we had these little like laminated. So this was when the oldest was like 4 or 5, right? And it was like, okay, here's the morning, right? You brush your teeth, you make your breakfast, you make your bed. And then you're ready for school, right? Mm-hmm. So I think like the reason I default to like, what do we do as a family is because, like I'm sure you do, a lot of my life is dictated by what's going on with my family, right? And so the more that I can teach my kids these routines and these habits that start to show up in their life, the less like overall chaos I'm living in, and the happier everybody is, right?
Yeah, you're ready to leave. The classic pattern is you're ready to leave, and you've got 4 kids. The probability of one of them not having shoes on at that moment is 98.7%. So I'm sure you have a process for that. It's probably on your little chart. If you're gonna head towards the door, I want to see some shoes on.
Yeah. Dad's got the chart out again.
Or they can't find their shoes, or some combination of. We always have shoe problems in my house.
Yeah, ours is like somehow everybody forgets to eat dinner before bed, and then they realize that they're so hungry the minute the bedtime starts.
We call that the bedtime parade.
But yeah.
Dad,
but like,
I'm starving. I gotta have.
There's this thing. There's this huge fork in the road as a parent, and it's true in business too, where when you notice something like that, okay. My kid forgot their backpack at their friend's house, and now they don't have their homework, and now I got to deal with it, right? Or my kid doesn't have their shoe on, and we're in the car, and now they don't have a shoe. Where you can either absorb that and make it your problem. Oh man, I got to remember tomorrow, like I got to put both the shoes on all 4 of the kids. Mm-hmm. Or you can start thinking, okay, what does this kid need to know to get their shoes on correctly next time, and maybe it's not like borderline child abuse whiteboard session, but like there's a principle there that I think is a through line with AI, with with process and context and all these things of always asking yourself, like, not like what is this person, this employee or this AI model or this kid, what are they missing to be able to do that right next time? Not how do I make my life more complicated by absorbing their mistakes into my world. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's a huge productivity unlock, because it keeps everything, all the monkeys from being on your back.
Delegation, same thing you do at work too. And with kids, you got to teach them agency. Like in today's world, and I'm sure you hear all the same podcasts I do. That's the secret unlock for surviving the AI stuff coming at us, is just give your kids the ability to kind of realize they can do stuff and build stuff and, you know, take ownership of a problem and go solve it.
Yeah, it seems like the more chaotic an environment is, the more agency is important, because there's less predictability.
So you use your little task boards for the kids and keep them gold stars and all that good stuff. How about do you have a family calendar that like has everyone's? Do you have like a intricate Gmail connection thing?
We have me and Steph have a Notion that we share.
Notion. Okay, you leaked Notion into your personal life.
Yeah, unfortunately, we haven't done like the family board meeting yet, but I'm sure that's coming.
There's a set of people. I'm not a Notioner, but there's a lot of people that Notion runs everything in their life, and they're pretty hardcore about it.
It's funny. I actually don't really use it for work.
Okay, so just started on the personal. Did that come from your wife, or you injected Notion into the chat?
Well, yeah, I did. It was my fault. She's been dragged kicking and screaming into it, but she loves it now. It just made sense. But we have a Notion. It's got everything from like, what are the recipes that we want to make, to what are our goals for the year. It's been helpful, I think, having some place where all that stuff lives. I think has been great. And then tell me if this resonates with you, Scott, but there are a lot of things that for a long time in my life, like, were processes. So I was a big fan for a long time of like reverse calendar blocking. So after I would finish a task, I would put on my calendar what I did, and that way at the end of the week, I wasn't trying to predict what I would do, because what I would do is chaos, but I'd document it in hindsight so I could come back and look at it. And then I had things similar to my kids, where it was like, okay, when I get home from work, like I do this, like I do dinner with the family, and then I like go and I exercise, and then I read, and then I journal. And I think that you go through periods in life where those things need to be structured, because you're trying to kind of create some new neural whatever. And then over time, you can kind of take the bumpers off the bowling alley, and you can say, okay, like I've done enough reps here that I can like freestyle my evenings. I know generally what I need to do. Right.
Yeah.
And so I find myself in one of those periods right now where, our oldest is 8, our youngest is 2. I'm doing a lot of different stuff right now. Luckily, I spent my 20s and my early 30s in a pretty routinized, productive way. And now all that feels like it's in there somewhere really deep, and I don't have to be as maniacal about it, right? It's like you hammer a nail into cement long enough, eventually it's like in there, right? Yeah. And then you can't get it out.
The way I would say it is, sometimes because you and I are systems people and we're so focused on productivity, and it's weird, I've never talked about this on the podcast, but you get so structured, and then you have unstructured time, and it like you actually reflect on that, and you're like, I actually did more in the unstructured time than the overly structured time. I need to kind of like mix some of that into the mix.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's more like a yin yang thing than it is like this is right and this is wrong. Right?
Yeah, there was on the business side at Channelvisor, there was a point in time where we had all this structure in place for what engineers did, and then we would have, between sprints, we would have 4 or 5 days where engineers could build everything. And I had this weird realization. It was like so we did all this work for 30 days, and the best stuff came out of those freestyle 5 days. And I'm like, why don't we make it's kind of like, why don't they make airplanes out of the flight recorder? I was like, I know why the answer on that one, but it's like when there's like for a second you're like, wait a minute, why don't they? I was like, maybe the process has gotten to be the point and not the output. And yeah, so yeah, there's sometimes productivity gets to that phase too. Sounds like you had one of those moments as well.
Yes, and I find that to be true at work too. And the way you just said it, I think, is exactly right. You created a process because there was an outcome at the end of it that you were trying to repeat. And at some point, those two things become disconnected. And like you realize that you're just doing it for the sake of the process and not for the outcome. And there's a lot of reasons that can happen. Like, I think something that I've wrestled with a lot over the years is that there's a fluidity early, like when you're in the product market fit stage, process can just wreck what you're doing, like everything. Right. But then when you start learning how to create repeatable outcomes, if you don't have process, it can just, you can really like lose your momentum and your velocity. And so I think it's what we're both describing is like, you kind of get to a point where you feel like you can diagnose and prescribe when each one is needed because you've experienced enough environments where, you've had too much or too little and you can just sense it.
I had and we'll pivot to the business side. I had a conversation with a founder, and a lot of founders love this EOS framework. I don't really know much about it. I've kind of scanned through the principles and everything. It's fine if you don't. I kind of developed my own little operating system, I guess an SOS, and which is kind of funny in its own right. And then it's good to have it as kind of there's some good stuff in there, but they were like 8 people. And they had these KPI things that were like 40 and 50, and they were spending like all this time on those KPI generation things. And I was kind of like, you're so far in this, you can't see it, but this process is running you, and you're not running the process. You kind of have to, pick 5 of those things, or stop it for 3 weeks and see how it feels. And if it feels better, do that. you have become the process is running you. You are not running the process.
Yes, that's right. I completely agree.
Did you ever go through an EOS phase?
We got pretty deep into it. Like when we hit 30 people, we were running EOS, and that was where I kind of developed this framework, I guess, of EOS. If you just kind of abstract the specific of EOS is just a set of like routines and patterns and processes, right?
Yeah.
And like what's nice about it is you don't have to figure it out yourself. You just borrow theirs. I think that stuff is really good when there's actually a pattern in place that you want to repeat. And it's really bad when you don't have a pattern yet. And so like when you're really small and you may not even have product market fit yet, or you just have a couple of customers, I think that stuff is like really stifling. But when you know your sales funnel math inside and out, and you've demonstrated it over and over and over again, you do have to start looking at leading indicators and issue solving around bottlenecks, and setting longer range goals and trying to see if it's predictable. And so I just think it's a time and a place thing. But yeah, I think systems people naturally can get stuck in that. I remember having a meeting where we were like trying to do a level 10 meeting, which is like an EOS tool. And we spent like 30 minutes arguing over whether we were doing the meeting right. And like, well, it says in the book on like chapter 5, verse 3, it says that an issue always and it's like, okay, what are we doing?
Yeah. Have you abandoned it totally, or just kind of cherry picked? You have your DOS.
Yeah, I just cherry pick. Cherry pick. It's DOS for sure.
Yeah. And I'm sure it works great for, I'm not trying to be negative on it. It's just kind of, some of these things have unintended consequences you need to be aware of when you think about adopting them.
I think you just got to look at whether there's repeatability.
Yeah.
I think repeatability is the like hinge that it runs on.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Tweener Talks and hearing about Dave's journey, kind of more of a roller coaster than a journey with offline. In the next episode, we're going to figure out how he has automated a lot of the functions of offline and how he automates his life with running a company, 4 kids, being married. It's a lot to keep track of, and he leverages some really interesting tools that we'll go through. Talk to you next week. Triangle Tweener Talks is hosted by Scott Wingo, presented and produced by Triangle Tweener Fund, with creative assets and design support from our friends at Walk West. That's it for today's episode. A big thank you to our guests, sponsors, and the team that makes this podcast possible. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who loves the startup stories coming out of the Triangle. Thanks for listening. We will see you next time on Triangle Tweener Talks.